Hey guys, it's Mike, Dirty Mike's Garage. I want to start doing some DIY videos. I've always been one to really try and encourage people to do their own work, and these timing belt and water pump jobs on the 2UZs, which came in the Tundras, Sequoias, the GXs, Forerunners. I really feel like most people can do them. If you have I would say your basic amount of tools, wrenches, sockets, ratchets, stuff like that. I feel like most people can do this job. So I want to create a video to where we go over some tips and tricks, recommended parts that you should replace, and also brands of parts. I think there are a few things that are very important in my opinion. So that's what this whole video is going to be about, is doing a timing belt and water pump job on a 2UZ engine, which is the 4.7 liter Toyota V8. A lot of this will apply as well to the other UZ families. You have the 1UZ, the 4 liter, and then the 3UZ, which is the 4.3 liter as well, which came in some of the Lexus cars. So let's get started. I want to go over a few parts, and then we'll go over a few tools that I'd recommend for doing the job to make it a little easier. Not necessarily a necessity, but to make it easier. Let's start with the main thing. This here is the go-to timing belt and water pump kit. This is an AISIN kit. This is basically OEM parts, but without the Toyota logo. The benefit to this kit is it pretty much has everything you need to do the timing belt and water pump, and it's OEM quality. A lot of people get confused and think that Toyota makes all of their parts. That is not necessarily accurate. This right here is AISIN. They make the water pumps for Toyota, at least for these engines they do. So let's open it up and see what we got. I will include all the part numbers. I'll have all the part numbers for these parts in the description on the video. Prices, we can talk about the prices a little bit here now. But this is not a crazy expensive job, and I feel like people should definitely try it if they have a decent amount of tools. It doesn't take anything crazy. But anyway, so this is the TKT-021 kit. All right, it comes with your water pump, timing belt. It comes with the water pump gasket, the O-rings for the water pump, and the thermostat housing. Your tensioner pulley, and then the idler pulley. So when you get your kit, it's going to look like this. It does have some instructions in here, which we will not need, but they're here for you. All right, so we've got an AISIN water pump. Got a nice new timing belt, only the best. And we've got your tensioner pulley, and then your idler. Comes with some new water pump bolts. I will go into more detail on this, but there are 2 nuts that you reuse on the water pump. And then you have your gasket right here, and then also the O-rings. These are important to replace. The O-rings that go on the crossover pipe that goes right into the back of the water pump, and then one of them goes on the back of the thermostat housing as well. So that's what we got in our timing belt and water pump kit. And let me throw this stuff back in here real quick. And then we also, on this particular Tundra that I'll be working on, we also have, here, I'll put this down here. All right, we also have an AISIN fan pulley bracket assembly that we're going to replace as well. And before we go any further, I also want to note that whenever I do these jobs, I always recommend doing a OEM crank seal. There's the part number, which will also be in the description. and I replace these every single time. Now, I do not do the cam seals every time. The non-VVTi engines are very simple to replace the cam seals. There's a few extra steps you got to do once you're down in that area. Those, not a problem to throw some cam seals in. If you have a VVTi engine, it's much more involved, and maybe I'll do a video on that one day. But for now, we just do the crank seal. The crank seals, I would say, leak fairly common. The cam seals, it is not common at all for these to leak, the cam seals. I've seen it, but not common at all. Doing an AISIN thermostat. So we're going to replace the thermostat while we're in there. Like I said, we have the AISIN fan bracket assembly. These, if they go bad, your fan could potentially, the bearing right here, the fan could potentially bump into the radiator and then blow the radiator out. All right, sorry about that. My daughter came out and needed some stuff. So anyway, your fan bracket pulley assembly here, the only purpose for this thing is it has a pulley on here, and then it has your clutch fan that goes on here. If this bearing goes out, it makes some terrible noise, but also the fan could actually drop forward and contact the radiator, which will blow the radiator. So it's a good idea to replace these. I don't replace them on every job, but you know, I do recommend them. But you know, sometimes customers they want to do just the minimum time belt water pump. Me personally, being a technician or a mechanic, you know, I'm cheap. You know, I would replace this when needed, but that's also with me doing the labor. The labor is not a big deal, and it's not a big deal to tear this apart and replace this if I needed to. So, you know, just take that for what it is. We're also going to do a new serpentine belt or drive belt and a new tensioner for that as well. These tensioners often will start failing, and the housing, it's a spring-loaded tensioner, and the tensioner will actually start leaning outwards like this, right? Your belt should be perfectly lined up with your other pulleys in the system, and this tensioner has a tendency, when the mechanism inside starts failing, the tensioner will actually start leaning outwards like this, which will cause all kinds of belt noise, squealing and stuff like that. So keep that in mind when you go to do this job. This is a good part to replace while you're in there. If you don't have any issues out of it, if it's perfectly lined up and it's got good tension on it, the bearing feels good, send it. You know, I mean, it's up to you, but they will last a long time. We're doing a new Denso radiator while we're in there. We have some new radiator hoses that we're going to put on it. This job does require, for the thermostat housing, it does require RTV, and in this case, Toyota's RTV is called Fibbage, F-I-P-G. This is what it looks like here. This is just one of my tubes that I have laying around. So we got some Valvoline, however you want to pronounce it, Valvoline or Valvoline, Xerex coolant. This is for Toyotas and Lexus. This is good stuff. It's, in my opinion, just as good as the OEM coolant, but it's like half the price. So I would not hesitate to use this, even with my Toyota background. This stuff's fine. There's not a lot of special tools that are required for this job. Fairly basic stuff. I think the biggest thing that I think people struggle with when they're doing this job is the crank pulley. There are multiple ways to get that crank pulley bolt loose. It is torqued down to a pretty good amount of torque, which that brings up another subject. I am going to have all the torque specs for everything. Your tensioner, the water pump bolts, the crank bolt. I'm going to, hopefully I don't forget anything, but I'm going to have everything listed in the video description details. for those who are extremely OCD and would like to go through and torque everything. That's on you. This tool right here is extremely handy for getting the crank bolt loose, breaking it loose. This tool right here is made for Toyota and Lexus harmonic balancers, crank pulleys. I'll have the part number listed in the description on the video for this, but you can get this on Amazon for 20 or 30 bucks, and they usually come with bolts and everything. But this bolts on, there's two holes, bolt holes on the crank pulley, and you would bolt this on like so, and then your socket with a big breaker bar would go through the center of it, and then you'd put another breaker bar on it right here. And then basically you could take the two breaker bars and go against each other and break the bolt loose. In my opinion, this is the correct way to do this. There are other methods. You could skip out on buying this, and sometimes if you have the room to get a really high-powered impact in there, you can impact the bolt loose. If that works, that's awesome. I often do these jobs without pulling the radiator, so that's not usually an option. Even with some of the good stubby impacts, they won't break them loose. The other option that you'll probably hear most people talk about is using the starter method, where they take a breaker bar and they take a breaker bar in a socket and wedge it, against the frame or the ground, and they bump the starter. That'll work. I mean, I've done it before. You're still going to have a hard time tightening the bolt down when you go to put it back on, which this can be used in the reverse rotation to tighten it down, and they need a lot of torque. Another thing is that it's a pet peeve of mine. A lot of people will use what's called a chain wrench on basically the belt surface, right, where your belt rides, right on the teeth. A lot of old school guys swear by chain wrenches. Look, they've got a place, but not on the pulley itself. Another thing is that the outside of a harmonic balancer, which I can show you more when we actually pull it off the truck, but the outside of the harmonic balancer, it's separated by a thin layer of rubber. So when you're trying to turn the outside of the pulley or hold the outside of the pulley while you're trying to break that nut loose, what happens is that you're twisting that rubber, and you can cause a premature failure of the harmonic balancer, which I've seen a bunch of. The outside of the harmonic balancer will actually fall off the crank pulley itself. You'll lose your power steering, alternator, AC, all that stuff, and your cooling fan too. So that's not advised at all. And another side effect too is that the chain wrench can cause little imperfections in the grooves on the pulley. That can cause premature wear on the belt. It can also cause belt noise. I don't know who in their right mind would want to cause that, but don't do it, okay? But just spend the 20, 30 bucks, use the right tool, or if you absolutely need to, use the starter method. It does work. You'll have to tighten that somehow. That's about really the only special tool you'll need. I'd say 50% of the timing belt and water pump jobs I do on these engines, the crank pulley, once you get that bolt off, I'd say 50% of them, the crank pulley, it'll come off nice and easy. The other ones, you have to use a puller. It's like you either get one or the other. And the ones that slide off nice and easy, usually the crank gear, the lower timing gear, will also slide off easily as well. So you can do your crank seal as well, your front crank seal. If you need to use a puller, you can rent some from the auto parts store, O'Reilly's or something like that. I have a puller set right here. Looks like this guy. This works perfectly fine for pulling the crank pulley off, along with this will also pull the lower timing gear off as well. I said you can do this with basic tools, and what I mean by that is that I think for the most part everything is basic tools. You don't have to go buy one of these kits if you're going to be doing this, once in the lifetime of the vehicle that you own it. You also do need I believe it's a 10 millimeter Allen wrench or Allen head socket for the timing belt tensioner pulley. And we'll go through all of this when I start on the truck, which will be tomorrow evening. But wanted to go ahead and do an intro, kind of talk about the parts, just a few things that I'd recommend. If you do end up getting one of these tools, you will need 2 decent-sized breaker bars. So keep that in mind. I pretty much use my impacts. I've got a variety of impacts, electric impacts. I've got a compressor, a pneumatic impact as well. But I've pretty much switched over to solely electric. Having a good electric impact, especially a stubby one, is a lifesaver. I thought about doing this job, the whole job, with hand tools, just to show you that it can be done in a timely manner, with basic tools. But I'm gonna skip that part and assume that people have some electric stuff, where you can go get stuff. I'd recommend it. So got the truck here. I'm all set up. Got our parts ready to roll. Radiators back there. Got all of our tools. There may be 1 or 2 things I don't have on the table that I'll grab when I remember, but for the most part, this is all I use right here. This is pretty much it. I got a couple impacts, got my 3/8. This is the quarter drive. I can put different attachments on here or whatnot. If you are a tool guy and you like tools, I highly recommend getting some magnetic sockets. These things are awesome. So I got a 10 and a 12 here that I use very often. This is a 12-14 combo. I've got a couple ratcheting wrenches. There's that crank pulley tool that I was telling you guys about. Got some gloves. Gloves are always great. Keep your hands clean. I got some swivel sockets. A couple different pairs of pliers. These are hose pliers. These things are great when you want to get the hose off of whatever it's attached to. Ratchet, couple different extensions, electric ratcheting wrench. Over here I've got my pry bars, breaker bars. There's that fibbage. Got a flashlight if I need it. So that's about it. There'll be a few other things that I'll talk about as we go along, but that's it for the most part. So let's get this job going. Alright guys, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to pop the radiator cap. Alright, set this. I usually just set it on top of the battery. Actually, scratch that. First we're going to put some gloves on. Some people don't like wearing gloves. I often do jobs without wearing gloves and then regret it, especially after I go someplace and my hands are just nasty looking. So anyway, we're going to take the splash shield off the bottom, or the mud guard, whatever you'd like to call it. We're going to take that off real quick. From the factory, these bolts are 12s. Over the years, they often get swapped out. People put different stuff on there. Let's see what this one is. That's a 12. Alright. And this one's going to be a little bit harder to get to because it's got that piece on the front. Let's grab the swivel socket. These are handy for this, but most of the Tundras don't have this on here. This is some sort of add-on deal, I think. It might have been part of the XSP package. I'm not sure. So there's that one, and the last one right here. There's that. I don't know if this thing is bent. Yeah, this tab was bent. Anyway, I usually I'll set these on top of here, and then I will just slide that back out of the way. Your drain for your radiator is right here. It's going to be on the driver's side. We are replacing this radiator, so we're going to take this guy out as well, the whole radiator. But for now, let's get this radiator draining. All right, so we're going to let that drain. All right, so while the radiator is draining, we can go ahead and start removing stuff off the top here. This is where I like to use the 1/4-inch drive with the 10 mil magnetic. Pop this off of here. This is your AC line that goes across the top. Sometimes I'll put the bolts back in it. Here you've got your throttle body cover. Take this off. Just flip it over, put the bolts in it, set it on the table. All right. We got to remove this clip right here from the air box. This hose right here. There's another hose right here. And there's supposed to be another one right here, which looks like it's already off. So then we will loosen this hose clamp up. Loosen that one up. Just kind of wiggle this guy, just like that. Set this down here, out of the way. All right, so now you can start seeing things that we're gonna have to be working on. I usually take this, set it like that. That kind of helps just keep it up out of the way. You have this line right here and this one. It is attached to the power steering pump idle up valve. You can leave it attached up here, and there's a clip right here, which I'll show you in just a second, that will remove to free up those lines. All right, so you can see I put the AC hose, I just used the bracket, just put it like that. These are the two lines I was talking about right here, this one and this one. These are just vacuum lines. There is a little, let's see if I can zoom in, there's a little clip right here. You just gently push, it'll separate, okay, and then this will come out like that. This one will come out, okay, and that's it. You can close this if you want to, just so it doesn't get snagged or broken or anything like that. All right, but those two lines go right there. This is the power steering pump idle up valve. So you can just leave that on there. Also, this valve internally, these are just vacuum lines, okay? But internally, this valve can leak inside, and what will happen is power steering fluid can get sucked into these vacuum lines and come around and get sucked right into the intake. I've seen it many a times where people are complaining about white smoke on startup, and sometimes that's because the power steering idle up valve is actually leaking internally, and it's sucking in power steering fluid. In my opinion, like, you can replace this if you'd like. It's, to me, it's easier to delete this thing and just get rid of these vacuum lines. You just block them off on the intake side, but that's totally up to you. If you want to do it OEM like, obviously just replace this guy. All right, so next we're going to remove the upper radiator hose. It should be, the coolant level should drain enough by now that we can go ahead and remove this hose. The coolant's still draining, but we'll remove this overflow right here. I usually just tuck this over here somewhere. Looks like somebody has swapped that clamp out. To an aftermarket clamp. This is like a worm gear style clamp. These are fine, but not obviously what was on their factory. This is actually a pretty good example of a radiator that is still okay. At least I don't see any leaks, but if you can tell in the video how brown the plastic is, that's usually a sign that it's pretty brittle. These radiators, when they're new, the plastic is black. And as they get older, the plastic turns brown and it becomes very brittle. So that's a good indication there that this radiator could eventually start leaking. So if you see your radiator and it's not leaking, it's fine, but it's brown in color, it may be time to plan on start replacing that. So these hose clamps absolutely suck. I don't care who you are, they suck. At work I have a special pair of hose clamp pliers that pull these and allow them to lock. I don't know if you saw that, but there is a little tab on there that will lock itself, so that way it'll stay, released. But it is a little bit of a pain to do that with regular pliers. But anyway, this is our old hose. We do have new hoses going on, but for now I'm just going to set that up here. Actually, I'll set it down here. I have a normal way of doing these things where it's just like muscle memory. For the video, I'm trying to slow down a little bit and kind of talk through what I'm doing, so that way it's a little bit easier to understand, and I'm going to try not to miss anything. So just bear with me as I, think as I'm actually doing things. The next steps, we'll probably take the upper radiator hose off here in just a moment. The radiator and the fan, or the radiator and the shroud, are going to be coming out here shortly after it's done draining. But what we're going to do is we're going to leave the fan in place. On these Tundras and Sequoias, the radiator fan shroud has a piece that's on the bottom, which I'm going to unclip right now. You can actually do it from the top, and I will show you. So this piece right here, this right here. It's the fan shroud, but this goes on the bottom. It has these little clips that go on there, like so. Okay, and it just attaches to this piece right here. It just goes straight on like that. It's got two tabs right here that slide in, and then these two little locking tabs at the top of the piece here. What this does is this allows you to, when you get the radiator unbolted, this allows you to pull the radiator and the fan shroud straight up without having to take the fan off. If this piece was attached to the shroud, you'd be forced to unbolt the fan and remove the fan at the same time. So taking this off the bottom allows you to pull the radiator and the fan out, or the radiator and the fan shroud out. So that's what we're going to do. And of course, one of those brackets just fell off, so I'll have to find that in a second. But so that's off. Let's see. Get this upper hose off. All right. Just wiggle that upper hose off. All right, so the upper radiator hose is off. Now we need to go down to the bottom. The radiator is still draining, but we need to go down to the bottom and remove the transmission cooler lines that go into the radiator. Same concept, it's just a hose clamp on a small hose that goes onto the radiator. And if you didn't know, if you're trying to do this job, you're not super mechanically inclined, or you don't understand a lot of this stuff, I still think you can do it, but your transmission has two lines that come from the transmission and they come up, and it has a transmission cooler built into the radiator. Almost all automatic transmissions are like this. And the radiator itself, it has like two sides to it. You have your coolant that goes through it, and then there's a small section that has transmission fluid that goes in and out. And this particular truck has a tow package, so it's got an external cooler on the front as well. So it's got the transmission cooler inside the radiator and on the outside over here. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and go down underneath. All right. So this is your lower radiator hose right here, and you've got your two transmission cooler lines right here and here. We can, for what we're doing, because we're pulling the radiator out the top, we can leave this lower radiator hose on. But squeeze the clamps, move the clamps over on the transmission cooler lines, just like so. All right, then I'm going to take these fancy pliers right here, grab these, give them a little wiggle. All right, and these guys will come right off. Now I just grabbed something random in the garage to plug this line. Normally you don't lose a lot of fluid, it'll just be a couple drops if you do this correctly. I'm gonna go ahead and close this petcock for the radiator. All right, slide this over. All right, go ahead and take this off. All right, let's see, nothing really came out, so we're good there. But I'm gonna plug it with something I found, and we'll do the same thing with this side. All right, so now that we've got everything disconnected from the radiator, all right, now you can see the fan is in here, and we are going to be able to pull the radiator and the fan shroud straight up. But the radiator is bolted on right here, okay, the spot here, and it's kind of hard to see, but there is a spot down, there's a spot down here that you have to get to as well, right there. See it? There's one of those on each side. So you got that guy right there, and then this guy right down here. All right, so that's what we're going to do next. We're going to unbolt that. All right, so these are 12 mils. This is a good job for the 12 mil swivel socket. There's one. There's two. The ones on the bottom, you're not going to be able to get straight on. If you have something like this electric ratcheting wrench, you can use one of these, or you can just use a generic ratchet with a socket. But I'm going to get in here with this. All right, there's one, and the last one. All right, that's the 4 bolts. And now we can go ahead. Radiator's loose, as you can see. It is a little big and, you know, awkward, but you can pull it straight out like so. Now, keep in mind that I did let this radiator drain, but there's most likely some coolant still in it. There's probably still a little transmission fluid in it. The petcock's closed. Radiator hose is on. So as long as I keep it kind of tilted back like this, no fluid's going to come out of it. So we're going to take it and we're going to just set it to the side, but I'm going to lean it back. So, and now we're down to having tons of room to work on everything. I think I might have mentioned that if I'm just doing the timing belt and water pump job and not replacing the radiator, I leave the radiator in it. It's very easy for me to leave it in, but I will admit it gives you a ton more room and access to things, especially if you want to use more impacts, power tools, and stuff like that. So it gives you a lot more room. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the next part. The next part is breaking these fan bolts loose, and we'll go ahead and walk you through on that. All right, so there are 4 12mm nuts on this fan bracket right here, and to give you an idea of what we're looking at, that is this guy here. So that is going to be these bolts right here, or nuts. But the fan, you got a pulley that slides on here, and then the fan goes on, and then there's 4 nuts. You can see this does nothing but just move that fan and the pulley. So this doesn't attach to your timing belt or your water pump or anything like that. But this can sometimes be a huge pain in the butt. Okay, so to get these nuts loose, you have to keep this from spinning. I usually use a pry bar. I'll put a 12mm boxed in wrench on one side, right, to break it free. And then I'll take a pry bar and wedge it against the other nuts like this to usually get it to kind of lock in so I can break the nut loose. And I'll go around and do that on each one and then take the nuts off. Now, those of you that are experienced, you've done this a dozen times, you'll know that these the clutch fan itself will get stuck on here. And from what I've seen is it'll get a thin layer of rust around this surface here and on this little nipple here. And even though the nuts are off, that fan will not come off. And you gotta beat on it, put a wedge in here and wedge it and pry it and all that stuff. It can be a pain in the ass, but and I kind of hope that that's the case this time, so I can show you which direction I take. Usually I'll try like a flathead or a pry bar with a sharp edge and get it in between the fan clutch and this surface here, and see if I can, start moving it right. If that doesn't work, then I'll break out an air hammer with a flat chisel and just give it a couple little taps, and it comes right off. So, but that's what we're going to do now. We're going to get this fan off of here. All right, so I've got my phone set up right above the fan. I'm hoping that you guys will be able to see this, and I'm also hoping that I can do this and make it look as simple as it normally is for me. But I'm also trying to watch the camera and watch what I'm doing. So anyway, but I take this so you can see that you can, and I left the belt on purpose, just so you know. The belt adds a little extra tension. It usually helps break these guys loose a little easier. But you can see I'm turning this pulley with the wrench. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my pry bar, and you want to try and wedge it in here in a way that when you grab the next nut with the wrench, that it will wedge itself, just like that. Okay, so I don't know if you could see that, but I got it. I got the pry bar wedged in there. Okay, let me see if I can show you how exactly the pry bar is sitting. So can you see that? So, and I'll remove the pry bar and just do that on every one of these, and hopefully that will give you a good idea of how to get these nuts broken loose. Because if you're not super familiar with this, they can be a pain. There's the second one broke loose. Got to get the wrench on there, spin it around. All right, here comes the next one. All right, there's the third one broke loose. All right, there's number 4. All right, so those are broken free. Hopefully they all come off by hand, nice and easy. All right, there's your nut right there. So I'm going to set these to the side. And at this point, actually, it's sometimes easier. You have to get all these nuts off of here. Now that they're broken free, now we can go ahead. I'm going to move you guys over. Now we can go ahead and take our belt off. We'll take the tensioner off. So I'm going to grab my 14 mil. Okay, so I got this 14 millimeter ratcheting wrench that I love to use just for this. All right, we're going to go the right way with it. All right, so you're going to go counterclockwise, take a little tension off. All right, and then bring it over, release it. All right, and then you can go ahead and take your belt off. Kind of unravel it from everything. Okay, there we go. All right, so now that the belt's off, now you can probably see now the fan bracket spins nice and freely. So now I can go ahead and get to these all in a much better location instead of trying to reach my hand around. So you want to break these free with the nuts on there, and that way you're not prying on the threads, just in case you are reusing that fan bracket pulley. You want to try and keep everything in good shape. And one last one. All right, so now we're going to see if it comes off. Oh, we are lucky. So this one came right off. Okay, so we're going to take that off, set it to the side. All right, so now you can see I just pulled the fan off. This is the pulley that goes on there. Okay, and this is just for the belt. That's it. So we're just going to set this to the side. I usually take the nuts, put it in the pulley, and then just set it on the table with the parts. All right, so now that we're down to this point here, the next thing I'm going to do is take this thermostat housing off. Okay, so getting the camera readjusted here. So actually I'm going to move it just a little bit over this way so you can see. All right, so got a little bit of a glare, but so yeah, we're going to take this thermostat housing off. So it's got a hose right here on the throttle body, a coolant hose. So if I can get these pliers in here like so. Let me grab my other pliers. All right, so pull that off like that. All right, now we might still have some coolant up here. It looks good. I'm just gonna prop that to the side. We got another hose clamp right here. We're gonna move that over. All right. I'm gonna take these fancy hose clamp pliers, and we're going to this hose right here. We're just gonna give it a little wiggle, make sure it's free. Okay, looks good. All right, now we're gonna take these two 12 millimeter nuts out. All right, now you can't really mix these up, but one is shorter than the other, and I'm gonna say this lightheartedly, but if you mix these two up, there's something wrong with you. You should not be doing this. Okay, there's an exception. You should not be doing this. I'm gonna put these on the table, and then this will go with the nuts or the bolts when I get it off. As far as getting this thermostat housing off, sometimes you can just grab it and pull up on it to break the seal. There goes a little coolant. Make sure you got your drain pan underneath it. Okay, and then we'll just kind of wiggle this off. There's an O-ring inside here, and that's what's keeping it on there. Okay, so we're just going to wiggle it, pull it out like that. Okay, There's your O-ring. All right, and then it's still in here, but we already broke it free, so we're just going to kind of gently just do this. You can see it's coming out. There we go. Also, all right, so this is interesting. So this has been done before, probably by an aftermarket shop, if I had to guess. This right here is a gasket. This does not take a gasket. If you peel this off, if it'll come off in one piece, there is a channel inside the thermostat housing right here that is made just for fibbage or the RTV. Okay. Now, although this wasn't leaking, this looks like a decent quality gasket material. I have changed a bunch of these of the Felpro brands. I don't know which one this one is, but use the right stuff. This you don't need a gasket for this. This is for fibbage. Okay. You put a bead of fibbage in here. You put a fresh O-ring on here, which comes in the time belt kit. Okay. And what I like to do is, when I go back together, I'll show you later, but what I like to do, I slide this hose in there first. I put my bolts in, and with the hose in there, I bring it in, and I line the bolts up, and we'll have that O-ring lubed up a little bit, and we'll slide it all together, and then tighten it down. So, on the bright side, because there's a gasket on here, there's less for us to clean. So that's a plus. So anyway, no gasket for this. I mean, if you get away with it, cool, but that's not what it's designed for. So let's keep on going here. All right, so now we're basically just working our way down, right? I always start from the left side of the engine, get all this junk off here, and then we'll start on the right side. The right side's a little bit more involved. The left side comes apart real easy. We're going to start by taking this idler pulley off. Then we're going to unbolt the power steering pump and the alternator, and I'll show you a little trick on that. You don't have to take the power steering pump all the way off. And then we'll take this timing cover off here. Then we'll take the tensioner off and this cover, and then you'll be able to see a lot more. So we're going to do that, and then we'll start working on the right side after that, or driver's side, left side of the engine, but visually right side. All right, let's get started pulling this apart. The idler here is a 14 mil, so I'll break that free. Get your impact stuck. So that's it right there. There is a washer on the outside, this outside. Okay, so I just keep this together, put it on the table with the parts. All right, next step. We have 3 14 millimeter bolts. Well, technically we've got a nut right here on the top. Okay, so this is a nut. So you're gonna unbolt that. All right, don't drop your nut. All right. And then you got a bolt here. All right, and then there's a bolt on the bottom. If I can get the socket on there. All right, there we go. All right, now slide these bolts out through the pulley, just like so. Put these on your parts table, or wherever you're keeping your parts. All right, so now your power steering pump is loose. The nut that's on the top, there's a stud there, so you can actually leave everything attached and slide it outwards. Okay. Your alternator is going to kind of be the same deal. There's a stud on the top, and the alternator has to slide forward. So you can't just unbolt the alternator and then just drop it out. It has to slide forward. Well, you can't slide it forward unless you unbolt the power steering pump. Now, the Tundras and the Sequoias are like this, where the pump is pressed, the pulley on the pump is pressed on. You don't really want to mess with that. It's kind of a pain in the butt. But on, I think it's the GX 470s and the 4Runners, this pulley is bolted on with, I think, like a 17 or a 19 millimeter nut. And you can actually pop that nut loose real quick with an impact, and the pulley will come right off, and you don't have to unbolt the power steering pump at all. You can just take the pulley off, one bolt or one nut, and then pull the alternator off. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get these bottom bolts nuts for the alternator. There's one. There's another one down here on the bottom. Just like so.
Okay, and then there should be 12 right here, yeah. And there's one last 12 mil right here. I do the 12 last because if I'm talking about saving time, you know, once I get that 12 mil off, my 12 mil socket is already on my impact for the next part of the job. So there's that. That's that technician mindset, you know, trying to do things in a timely manner. But this is how I do this. I lean over the engine bay. I grab the power steering pulley with one hand and I pull it forward. I grab the alternator pulley with the other. I pull it forward. Okay. I drop it down like this. The next thing I do is I take my left hand and I make sure that this battery cover is on here because I did not disconnect the positive terminal in the battery. I highly recommend you doing that. If you've never done this job before, please disconnect that battery terminal. Okay, that's probably should be step number one. Okay, but I would say that this is one of those scenarios where I'm experienced, do as I say, not as I do type deal, I guess. But that's good advice. Okay, remove the battery terminal so you don't have to worry about shorting that out against the frame or anything like that. But I just set the alternator down there, just kind of turn it, twist it to the side, set it, and I set it to where just in case that positive terminal is kind of facing up, it's out of the way, it's not going to touch anything, and it's pretty snug sitting there. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take this cover off here, which is a 10 mil, which I have on my other impact with the 1/4 inch. And this is the magnetic one that I like using. This is going to be a good example here of what you could see. But there's a few of these 10 mil bolts around the outside here. Okay, we're going to get those off. All right, and then this one here in the center, sometimes these nuts actually get stuck to the stud, and that's what's happened here. So this is supposed to come off as a nut, and it has gotten seized onto the stud, and it pulled the stud out. So you can see that there. This happens, okay? If it happens, it's not a big deal. You can take, I have a tabletop vise that I just clamp this in and then just bust the nut loose on the other side. And then when you go to put it back together, I'll show you, but we'll put this stud in first and then put it back together the way it goes. But we're going to take these, put them on the table. All right, and then we're going to take my impact with the 12 mil that I was telling you about. We're going to take these bolts loose here. Okay, this bracket here. All right, take this out, this out. Something to notate, okay? These two bolts, one of them goes right through here on the fan bracket housing. The other one goes right through here, which is the water pump. All right, so just keep that in mind. I just usually just flip this over, put it on my parts table, just like that. All right, I'm going to take that same 12 mil on the bottom of our belt tensioner here. There's a 12 mil right down here, which, oddly enough, was loose. Take that nut off. Take that nut off. Okay. So there's two nuts and a long bolt. And then there's our drive belt tensioner right there. Alright, so that's pretty much all we can do on this side of the engine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move over and start on the other side of the engine, which you have to be a little bit more careful with things, but I'll walk you through it. Alright, so the first thing I like to do on this side is we have this coolant pipe right here. Okay, it runs down. There's a 10 millimeter bolt right here, and then the top of it uses a 10 millimeter nut right here. It's the same one on the other side that holds the timing cover on. So I like to get these loose first. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go down here to the bottom. Okay, I'm going to break that loose. Go right here. Break that loose. Set these to the side. All right, now this is the fun part. When I move this out of the way, coolant's going to come out of here. Okay, so right now this is the highest point. The engine is still filled with coolant. There are, on each side of the engine, there are what's called block drains. And if you look them up, they're very useful, especially if you're doing a full, engine rebuild or something like that, and you want to pull the engine with no coolant in it. There's a block drain on each side of the engine with like basically a little nipple that sticks out, and I think it's a 10 mil, and you can loosen it up, and you can put a hose on it and drain it right into a bucket, and you can drain every little last drop out of the block. We're not going to do that. I try to avoid crawling around underneath the truck if I have to, so we're just going to tilt this hose to the side, let the coolant drain out, hopefully get most of it in the drain pan, and we'll be good. So what I did is I moved the drain pan over. I take this, I kind of just, oh look, somebody's got a zip tie on here, so pay attention to that. You never know what somebody's been in there doing, if somebody's gone in there before you and really jack stuff up. So we're going to cut this zip tie. All right, and I'm just going to kind of, this is a rubber hose here, as long as you don't like kink it or twist it too much. All right, so I just kind of kick that over to the side there. You can see the coolant coming out. So I'm going to let that drain for a second while let me see if I can. All right, so that's going to drain like that. We'll go back to up here. All right, so this is very common. You can probably see, yeah, I can see this in the camera, but this tab is broken on the throttle body. Okay, this is very common. The older trucks, the plastic gets brittle. Just be very careful with these. Okay, I mean, if they break, there is a rubber seal in here that holds these connectors on here pretty snug. You'll most likely never have a problem with it, but you can tell this has been broken previously, so I don't even need to press the lock down. I can just pull it off like that. So, but inside here, there's a rubber seal. So, you can see this tab right here. This is supposed to be in here. This is all broken apart. Somebody's broken that. We're gonna go ahead and unplug our cam sensor here, camshaft position sensor. Okay, and then up here, we're gonna unplug this guy. Okay, this is for the oil control valve, I believe. All right. So now that we've got here, I'm going to take this AC line off of here for a moment so you can see. All right, so what I'm doing now is this wiring harness that runs down the front here. My goal is to get this out of the way because I need to get this off. So I unplug this guy, this camshaft sensor, okay, and then I'm going to just gently, pull this around like this and pull this up. Okay, you don't want to break any connectors, and you pull this up like that, and I just pry it like, kind of position it where it's wedged in there, and I just kind of push the connectors and kind of get them back over here to where they're situated out of the way. All right, now they may not stay there. You may have to move them a few times, but you can kind of usually see how I just did there. I just kind of wedged the harness out of the way, okay? Now the harness is out of the way all the way around this cover. So, yeah, so I'm going to put this back up here like so. All right. Next thing we're going to do is this little rubber. This is the pigtail for the camshaft sensor. All right. Now this guy, there's a little clip on the bottom down here. Just pop that off like that and be gentle with it. And then there's a rubber grommet. Take the rubber grommet off. Okay. All right, set this on your parts table. And then we're going to take our 10 mil, and we already got the bolt in the center because that held the water pipe on. We're going to take these off all the way around. There's one kind of hidden down here on the bottom. All right. Now what we're going to do, now this is me talking from experience, okay? This right here, this connector, this pigtail, it's got a clip that's on here that is somewhat a pain in the butt to get loose, okay? I'm just saying from experience, this can be a little bit of a pain. So what I like to do, and I didn't always do this, but I like to do now, is take this guy off, and I just let it kind of fall down like this. Okay, and then I take a 10 mil socket, and there's 2 bolts. You have your stud here with the nut on it that's welded to it. We take that loose, and we take the 10 mil, that it's a bolt that's right here. We take that loose, and then this whole thing will come off. The reason I like doing it this way is because, one, I don't have to mess with that tab on the outside, right? And two, when you get this out of the way, there's wiring right here. Let's see if I can show you. Okay, there is wiring right here on the sensor that kind of hangs off the back. I don't know if you can see that. I'm kind of moving it with my finger, but there's wiring right there, and if you leave this sensor on there, I've seen it a bunch of times where when you're sliding the water pump on and off, it actually gets snagged right there and can damage the wiring, and that can cause you some issues for no start concerns and stuff like that. So let me grab my socket and we'll pull that off. Take it off just like that. Just, you want to hold it so it doesn't fall. Anyway, so now you can kind of see there's a 10 mil bolt. Okay, and the nice thing is that this is actually, there's no way you can mess this up putting it back on. There is a part on the head itself that sits in here, so it's easy. You can't mess it up. But now you can kind of see that wiring right there. Okay, so this wiring hangs down kind of low, and for you to, if you can kind of visualize this, the water pump bolts on, and for you to get the water pump on and off, you have to bend this wiring out of the way. And what happens a lot of times is that if people aren't paying attention, that wiring can get pinched or ripped going in and out like this. So to me, it's like 2 extra seconds to unbolt the sensor, and it's off. All right, so now we can get down to some more fun stuff. We're going to take off the fan bracket pulley now. So we got, on the face of it, we have 2 12s and 2 14s. So we'll take off the 2 12s. There's one here at the top. Okay, then there's a bolt right here. Take that out. Put those on the table. Switch sockets. Alright, I got the old swivel socket on here, so that's the nut, and then down here is the bolt. Alright, so we got the bolts off the face of it, but it is not ready to come off yet. If you can tell, it's still tight. That's because if you look at the new one, it sits in here like this, okay? The new one, you have 2 bolts right here that go through the AC compressor, and they kind of lock this all together. Okay, so we got to get those out. All right, so like we said, there's 2 bolts. Okay, one of them is right here. All right, some of the trucks, depending on what year and whatnot, have a bracket here for the AC line or the AC electrical connector that sits on. Some of them have a bracket that kind of goes over the top like this. The ones that go over the top, you can very easily just bend that bracket upwards, so that way this bolt, you can break it free and it comes out. The other bolt is on the bottom side, which you can get to from the bottom pretty easily, and that one comes right out. There's nothing in the way. This one, however, what we're going to do is there's a little Phillips head screw right there in front of my finger. We're going to take that screw off, and that should release this bracket, and that way we can get to this bolt easily without having to bend or fight this bracket. All right, got the screwdriver on there. Now these things can be a pain. These little Phillips head screws, they strip out all the time. It is an awkward position, and it does not always come out as easily as this one just did. So be prepared for that. You see the little Phillips head. So this guy, it can strip out really easily because of, I think, the location of where it's at. So keep that in mind. You may end up, kind of bending the bracket. You can unplug the compressor clutch and you can bend that bracket and kind of get it out of the way and stuff. So it is, if you can get this out, it is easier. So but set that to the side. All right, now we're going to go ahead and get this 14 millimeter out and the one on the bottom. I'm going to opt for the impact, if I can squeeze it in here around the camera. Without, if I can get a good bite on there. All right, see, that came out, and then there's one on the bottom. Which I'm going to get to with an extension in that same 14 mil. I don't know if you'll be able to see it from the top, but it's pretty straightforward. And actually, you know what? I'm going to move the camera. This particular truck, some of them don't have it. I think it depends on the year, but this one has a little bracket that sits in front of the bolt that we need to get out. So I'm going to show you. All right, so this wasn't necessarily the easiest to get the camera set up so I can work and so you can see, but there's the bolt we need to get to is right back here. There's this bracket right here. So we're going to take that off real quick. Okay, so we got a 12 right here. Take that guy out. You know, as I'm doing this and I'm, you know, trying to get comfortable on the camera and stuff like that, I start to realize how many times I say certain things like that guy and, you know, stuff like that. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe critiquing myself too much, but anyway, I got that bracket off. We're going to go ahead and get this bolt out here, the one that we need to get the bracket off, the fan bracket off. Okay, so that's it right there. I usually, the way I like to organize things is I keep bolts with parts and also location. So for example, this bracket and these bolts that we just took off, I will leave under the truck right here in front of the tire. And now we're down underneath here, so we can go back up to the top. All right, we're back up top, and now we can go ahead and get this bracket off. So you can see now that we've got all the bolts out, there's a harness right here. Okay, so just as you're pulling it off, you just pull it out of the way. Okay, see how I did that? And that's it. Okay, before I move out and go any further, there's this little plastic dust cover right here. Okay, this guy. Do not forget this. Okay, it is important. It keeps dust and debris from getting into the timing belt area. And I'll show you what I do in just a second to make sure I don't forget this. So we're going to put this fan bracket on the table out of the way. All right, and now we are down to the crank pulley, which is the fun part. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a socket on here, and we're going to rotate it over to where it says 0. All right, but we're also going to make sure that our timing marks line up. All right, because you can have this basically 180 out, 360 out on the crank, I guess, but 180 out on the cams, and the timing marks will be on the bottom, and this will stay 0. So we're going to do that now. I'll show you. All right, so this is a 22 millimeter bolt, and I usually just take a 22 millimeter socket with a 1/2 inch ratchet, and I will just manually just rotate it around, just like this. Okay. We're looking for that timing mark on the crank pulley. All right, and I'll go into a little bit more detail, but I only use this as a reference. I do not use this for timing. All right, there it is. So we're going to back it up just a little bit. Okay. All right, that's good enough. Okay. Now, if you can see, our cam marks are lined up, and you can see somebody has gotten happy with the paint pins, which is fine, but always check the actual indentations. You know, you never know if somebody put the marks in the wrong spot, so just make sure you know what you're looking at and not just following somebody else's advice that could or could not be correct. So, but our cams are lined up. Our crank is at 0 on the timing cover itself. Okay, not the actual timing mark, but the timing cover. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take that special tool that I have that is cheap and that I recommend, and we're going to put it on here, and we're going to break this loose. So just 1 second. All right, so we're going to take this guy, get this bolt in here. I got the camera literally right in my way, so, but there's 2 holes in the face of the crank pulley. Okay, so get one started and get the other one in there, get it started. These bolts, just so you know, I've been using this tool for probably, I would say, going on 12 to 15 years with these exact bolts and washers on here. So it works well. We're going to then take our electric ratcheting wrench. We're going to run these bolts in until they're snug. They don't have to be super tight. Just run them in so that way the tool doesn't, you know, come back off or anything, move around. All right, that's that. So now we're going to take our 2 breaker bars. Okay, and one breaker bar is going to hold the crank, okay, in the tool, just like that. And then we're going to take our 22 millimeter socket, put it on the other breaker bar, okay, and then we're going to put it in here, like so. All right, and then you're going to pull these two, because you're loosening it, you're going to pull these 2 breaker bars towards each other. What I like to do is get on the passenger side of the truck, and I pull this one right here on the right, this one, and I pull it towards me, and I just hold this one. I have 2 different length breaker bars. I put the longer one on the crank bolt itself, and that works pretty well. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. All right, so I just kind of reposition the camera. And I've just got myself kind of wedged in a spot here, and I'm going to pull until it breaks free, just like that. Okay. And once it's broken free, take that breaker bar off and make sure the bolt is hand loose, just like that. All right, and you can go ahead and take it all the way out. No time lapse going on here today. All right, there's your bolt. Set this on the table. All right, and what you can do before you take this breaker bar off is rotate it back over and just kind of put it back at 0. Then you can take this breaker bar off like that. Now here's the fun part. I'll move you back over here. All right, so here's the fun part is we're going to see if the crank pulley wants to come off without using a puller. Now this is, somebody's definitely been in here, so I'm hoping that it'll slide right off. Oh yeah, we got lucky here. Oh, hang on, I just knocked the camera over. All right, so we got super lucky, which is cool for the video, I guess. It's cool that I don't have to get the puller out, but you know, I would have showed you guys how to do the, you know, use a puller, but there are YouTube videos on how to use a puller, so it's not a big deal. And definitely struggling with the camera right in the way. And come on, girl. There she is. All right, give you a little bit better visual of how the tool works. So there's 2 bolt holes on the face of it, and it bolts in there. And okay, what I was talking about not using a chain wrench, this little groove right here is rubber. There's rubber inside there, and this is a dampener. It's to dampen the vibrations and stuff like that from the engine and all that good stuff, right? Well, if you hold the outside of this pulley with a chain wrench, okay, which sometimes you'll see, sometimes people have done it before in the past, and there'll be marks on here. This one looks okay. I don't really see any chain wrench marks, but it'll leave nice indentions. Like basically every link of the chain will leave a dent in the pulley. That's a no-go in my book. So just use the right tool for the job. All right, so crank pulley's off. This is that hose that we let drain. All right, so it's pretty much empty. I'm just gonna kind of bend it back the other way and kind of just wedge the hose over here out of the way so it's out of my way. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this timing cover loose. All right, they're all 10 millimeters. You got one in the center right there. Okay, there's one right here. One at the bottom. And there's one over here on this side. All right. Now this cover, sometimes they get stuck. But you just wiggle it and just gently, kind of work your way around. There you go. All right. Now that's off. Important information time. This right here is very important. This is the crank position sensor, or timing gear, if you want to call it that. Timing gear. The sensor is right here, crank position sensor. This is what that sensor reads. This has to go back on. Okay, if you can see in the video, this has a concave to it, so it's not perfectly flat. All right. Some of you might understand immediately why, but it has a concave so that way it doesn't catch the timing belt. All right, so when this goes back on, and I'll mention it again when we go back together with it, but when this goes back on, make sure that the concave edge is facing the right direction to where it's pointed outwards. Okay, so that way if you put it going this way, it's liable, as it's spinning, it's liable to catch the edge of the belt down here. Okay, so keep that in mind. It is keyed, so it only goes on in one orientation or one way, but you can have it flipped around the incorrect way. All right. What I do is I set the timing cover down. I wanted to tell you guys what I do so you don't forget that little dust cover. Okay. So what I always do is I set this with this guy here. Okay. That way you can never forget it. All right. It's right here. You can't forget it. Everything's right there inside that timing cover. All right. So now we're down to the timing belt. We're gonna step by step what we're doing. We're gonna loosen up these two 12 millimeter bolts on the tensioner, and we're gonna take that tensioner out. And then we'll be able to pull the belt itself off. Then we'll go ahead and remove the tensioner pulley here. Okay, and then we'll remove the idler pulley. We'll remove the lower crank gear, and I think at that point we'll go ahead and remove the water pump. So that's what we're going to do starting now. All right, I'm going to take a wrench, break these two 12 millimeter bolts loose down here on the tensioner. Once they're loose, if you have the tools for it, hit it with the electric ratchet, or tighten it back up like I just did. My goal for this video is really to try and provide enough information and know-how, I guess, so that way the average person can do this job. I feel like if you want to, that this is a job that you can do to absolutely save some money, and I think it's also pretty fun. It's a fun project that I think that if you follow a decent instructional video, that you could do something and be very proud of yourself. You can tell somebody that you did it. We just took the tensioner off. It was just the two 12 millimeter bolts. And then if you watched, I pushed the tensioner over a little bit and the belt came off. So we're going to throw this down on the ground underneath the parts table. And next I'll go ahead and let's see, we can try and see if this lower crank pulley will slide off. And it doesn't look like it, so we might have to use a puller on that, which it's kind of a pain in the butt, but you know, at least I get to show you how to use the puller and whatnot. We're going to take the idler and the this is the idler, this is the tensioner pulley. We're going to take those off real quick. All right, there's that. And then that's where that 10 millimeter Allen socket that I was showing you guys in the beginning of the video, that's this guy. All right, now something important note time, I guess, if we can call that. There are important things to know at certain times. This is one of them. This is the tensioner pulley, okay? This washer has to be on here, okay? And this has to be on here. Now, also, I've done probably hundreds of these by now, maybe 1,000 of these jobs. I ran into it a few times that when this is an aluminum housing here, and when people put these bolts back in, they'll run them in real tight and they'll pull the threads out of the housing. I have pulled specifically this bolt right here. I have pulled this out and there's aluminum threads on this bolt when it comes out, and you got to use like a time cert or a repair kit to repair the threads to get it back together, or else you're replacing the oil pump housing. So anyway, when this goes back together, make sure that washer's on the back, because this will come with a whole new assembly, but you're going to reuse the bolt and the washer, and it'll go back on there like that. But make sure the washer is on there. The little rubber piece right here for the tensioner got stuck in here. The tensioner has a new one of these, so no big deal. All right, so now we're to this point here, and I also want to show you guys that this is not an OEM pump. This looks like some sort of Gates kit. They do come with the new bolts, but they're not the right size heads. And also, that would explain why it had a paper gasket up at the top. But if I didn't know any better, I'd say this thing is leaking. I don't know when it was done, but definitely looks like there's some dried up coolant in there. So keep that in mind when you're buying your parts. I would definitely highly recommend getting an AISIN kit. It's the only one I'll use. So if you want me to do this job for you and you bring me this kit, I'm not putting it on. So sorry if that's, you know, harsh, but all right. I forgot to start recording getting this set up, but this is just a very generic puller set. It comes with a bunch of different size bolts. The set that I have just happens to have the correct size threads that are in here. I'd have to look to see what they are. But anyway, I got this set up. These pulleys, this crank pulley, they're usually just tight enough to where you can't pull them off by hand. But when you have the puller set up, usually they'll come right off. You can see I'm doing this by hand, and it's coming right off. So I am going to grab my ratchet and run it all the way off, but it will come off by hand. So we'll grab that. The set that I'm using, if you guys care, it's a Matco set. I've had it for a long time. All right. So that's your lower crank gear. Okay. You can see it's got a timing mark on it right there, and you can also see the crank's got a little bit of surface rust on it. That's probably what was holding this up. It's just a little sticky, trying to get it off. So we'll just take like a Brillo pad or something. We'll scruff that up and get it cleaned up. Also the inside of this pulley. So, but that's our cam seal that we're going to replace. And there's our water pump. So we're going to, excuse me, we're going to get to it and start working on that. I think what we might end up doing is we'll go ahead and yank the water pump out and let it drip dry for a little while, and then we'll get everything cleaned up. So I'm going to move my my drip pan over, try and get it right underneath the nose of the engine there, because when I unbolt this this water pump, it's going to have coolant go everywhere. So getting my sockets. These are supposed to be 12s, but these look like they're 13s because they're not OEM quality. So that's another thing you got to deal with when it comes to aftermarket stuff. I almost said crap. I wanted to say crap, but aftermarket stuff. So you get different size bolts. So kind of the unexpected, you know. For example, it still uses, it retains the nut that's over here, which I'll show you. But anyway, you go around the water pump housing, take all the bolts out, and let me get my 12mm back on my socket. There's a 12mm nut right here that you reuse. Okay, there's the nut, and then there's this bolt right here. Okay, and then there's this one right here. All right, and now the water pump is completely unbolted. All right, and let's see, where's my pry bar at? All right, so what I usually do to break the water pump seal, and also there's an O-ring right in there on the back of the water pump housing. So I take a pry bar and I use this bolt on the throttle body, and I just wedge it in here. And this is very gentle. I'm not hurting anything, okay? But we're just going to very gently just push, okay? And we're going to grab the bottom of the water pump, and we're going to just kind of just gently walk it off of that O-ring seal, because that's what it's stuck on. Just nice and neat. There it goes. Okay. All right. Now this guy we can walk it off. Okay. It's stuck on the gasket here. There we go. All right. So here's a glimpse of our parts table right now. It's a little bit of a mess, but this looks like a mess to me, or maybe to some of you, but this is pretty organized to me. I've got everything exactly where I need it. I've done this so many times, though, that I can stir this all up and I know where everything goes. But what I wanted to show you is that on the engine block, it looks like right here, there's dried up coolant right here, okay? And you can see it's running right by this bolt and then running down. All right. I thought it was a gasket at first, maybe a gasket failure, but after inspecting the gasket in the same general area, the gasket looks like it's okay. But the weep hole for the water pump is right here as well, right next to that bolt hole. So this water pump was actually leaking. It was on its way out. I don't see any markings on this water pump. I don't know what brand it is. Might be able to look it up by the part number there and see what it is. But this is definitely not an AISIN pump. And you can see, here's the AISIN pump. You can see there's some significant differences in the way that they cast these. I don't know if they do this to save weight material. I'm not really sure. But either way, and I can't speak for the internals of these two pumps. I've never actually taken the pump itself apart to look at the differences. But just at the casting itself, you can see the difference on the two pumps. So you know, it is what it is. We're gonna stick to our well-known AISIN brand products, but we've got our gasket and all that stuff in there. But first, what we need to do is we are going to get everything cleaned up. So this is just kind of the boring part, but we're gonna get this gasket surface cleaned up. Probably hit it with a little whiz wheel and just clean it up. This O-ring on here comes in the kit. Okay, this guy has to be replaced. You got to put the new O-ring on there. All right, and we're gonna put our new OEM crank seal in as well, which I'll show you guys that, but I'll probably get all this cleaned up and then come back and show you how to do the crank seal. Okay, so we'll work on that now. All right, guys, so we got it all nice and clean. As you can see, I cleaned the gasket surface where your water pump goes. This guy here, okay, went through there. And I'll wipe it down one more time before actually putting the gasket on. I still need to put the O-ring in here. But what I want to show you next is the crank seal. Let me grab a screwdriver real quick. So I use a flathead screwdriver. I've got one particular screwdriver I use. I will say be cautious when you're doing this, because when you pull, there are seal pullers specifically designed for this. This will do the job just fine. Just use your brain, okay? This crankshaft seal is made to seal against the crank, okay? That crank is perfectly smooth. You do not want any marks on it or anything like that, right? Now you can see that the sealing surface is about 1/4 inch back from this lip here, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this screwdriver and right at the sealing surface, okay, I'm going to push it in, all right? But I am not pushing on the crank. I'm pushing away from the crank against this lip here, okay? So, all right, so and then once I get it kind of wedged in there a little bit, then I'm going to take it and I'm just going to pry outwards like this, okay? And if I do this and give it just a little bit of a twisting motion at the same time, she'll come on out. All right. Now some of you might be like, oh, you're going to damage the sealing surface, but I did not touch the sealing surface at all. Okay. There's a little mark right there on the very outer lip, but nothing. There's not one groove or anything on the sealing surface itself. Okay. And there's your seal. Okay. All right. So unfortunately, I just installed the crank seal, recorded the whole thing, kind of gave some tips and whatnot, and my phone died, and I didn't know it. So anyway, this is the old one, and I wanted to just go over real quick. I put a little bit of lubricant on the new seal, right along this seal surface right here, to get it to slide very easily over the crank. And the stuff that I use is this right here. This is the Toyota rubber grease. It's we call it pink rubber grease. You can use anything that's safe for rubber, but you just need a little bit. And what I wanted to show you is that I use, you can see the new seal is installed, and what I wanted to show you is that I use this. All right, so I use an extension just like this. And what I do is I just butt it up against the crank just like that. And if you look, it overlaps onto the oil pump housing. So if you use this to tap this in all the way around, right, you cannot, it won't go in any further than that because it's hitting the oil pump, okay? So this is a really safe bet. It gets it nice and flat all the way around, and it gets it perfectly right on the sealing surface. And you can see what I was talking about earlier is a little tiny mark right there, but there's nothing on the sealing surface, so we're good there. So anyway, so this is good. We can go ahead and put the lower timing pulley back on. I'm gonna kind of give this a little just scrub, you know, with like a little Brillo pad or something, just clean it up, and then we'll start working on getting the water pump on. All right. Also, guys, so I currently have my phone plugged in, and the microphone that I normally use, it has the plug-in on the charging port. So no mic right now, so hopefully the sound quality is okay and you guys can hear me just fine. But anyway, I cleaned this up just with a little Brillo pad. I also cleaned up the inside of this guy, and this guy, you get the key lined up, and there you go. And now that slides on and off like it should. Next, what we're going to do is I'm going to take the Brillo pad, hit the surface one last time, wipe it down with a clean rag. We'll put our new O-ring on here, so I'll do that next. All right, guys, we're just giving this one last little, you know, scrub down. Just make sure there's nothing stuck left on the surface. I like to use these, you know, little dish pads. These work pretty good. You're not trying to take any material off of it. You're just trying to make sure that, you know, the sealing surface where the gasket's going to go is good. There's nothing stuck on there. So once you go across the whole thing, this is like the third time going across it, so it's all smooth to the touch. There are, you know, some spots that look like there's something stuck on there, but it's very smooth. So I'm gonna just take a rag. Try that cooling up there. All right, we're gonna take a rag and just wipe around with the finger. Make sure it's all clean. Make sure there's no debris. I also took the air compressor and blew this whole area out too, so just to make sure that there was no dirt and debris and stuff. This is just kind of a last second ordeal. All right, so it looks good. And now we're gonna take, this is our new O-ring that comes in the timing belt kit, okay? We're gonna put this guy on here, okay, like so. Just kind of roll it on there, okay? And now I'm gonna take some of that pink rubber grease. Take a little bit of this stuff. Just kind of smear it around on my fingers. And I'm gonna basically just rub it around on all sides of that O-ring there, okay? Because when this water pump slides on, I want it to slide on easily and not roll that O-ring, because that would be really bad. That'll create a leak for sure. All right, so now that that is lubed up, let me wipe that right there where I got a little grease on there. All right, now we're gonna take our water pump gasket, okay, and it slides over that stud there, and this one over here, and we're gonna just walk it on like so, okay. Now we've got our new water pump. It's going to go on the same studs. Just like that. We're going to walk this guy on there, okay, and you'll feel it too. It's going to contact that pipe, that coolant pipe, and you're just going to want to gently walk it on, just like that. You don't want to force it. You want to just make sure that it slides on nice and snug, okay. And now we can go ahead and start taking the bolts. I usually start. These are the two original studs and nut, okay? If you remember, one of them goes in here. The other one goes in over here. Just like that. And then we've got this nut right here. And this guy's gonna go down here. Okay, and then the kit comes with new hardware. Okay, this is why it's great going with the AISIN kit. It comes with new bolts too, and these are the correct size bolts as well. These are 12 mils, just like they would be from the factory. Okay, you buy the incorrect stuff, or I won't say incorrect, but you buy the cheaper brand stuff, and you get like oddball size bolts with it. I don't know why they can't find 12 millimeter bolts, but it drives me crazy when I have to break out different sockets. You know, it's not planned, you know. All right, real quick, this guy goes in here. All right, so now we're gonna take our impact, okay, 12 mil. All right, now this is one of those situations, do this at your own risk, okay? I run these in by using this. I try to start from the middle, kind of work my way out. Okay, and I don't run these in very hard, just get them snug, right? And I work my way all the way out to the outside. All right, after I do that, I grab the ratchet and I do it by hand. I want to make sure that each one of these is torqued down to a nice even amount, and sometimes that's hard to do with the electric impact, and I can feel a lot better with doing it by hand. I know that sounds silly because we could just break out the torque wrench, which, by the way, I will have the torque specs for everything that I'm doing in the description on the video. I've already got them saved in my phone just for doing this video, and you know, I wanted them to be available for anybody that might want to use them. If you have a pretty good grasp on, you know, bolt sizes and stuff like that, you know, whether you're tightening up against aluminum or steel and all that kind of stuff, like you know, you can kind of get a good idea of where they should be. But judge me on that if you'd like, but this is not about that. So anyway, I'll have the torque specs available if you need them. All right, next, this is our timing belt idler pulley. We're gonna go ahead and put that on. Nothing really special to this pulley. This is one of those ones that you gotta be careful with because you're going into an aluminum housing. Okay, so just be mindful of that. I like to get it started. I will run it in with the impact, just like so. And I go ahead and just make sure it's tight, but not overly tight. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing with the tensioner pulley. Okay. So open this box up here. Our new tensioner pulley here. Okay, and these are all OEM brand parts. Okay, that's the nice thing about these AISIN kits, is they come with all the good stuff. Here's your old tensioner. Okay, we're going to pull this washer off, push this bolt out. All right, and this is what the bolt looks like here. If I can get it. There we go. All right. So this is what your bolt looks like. Okay. And we got the new one. Slide the bolt in just like so. Put this nut, the washer on the back. And we're gonna go down here, get it lined up, start threading it in. Make sure it's started. All right, that is the big thing. Make sure you can get a few threads on it by hand, and you're not going to just ram it in there with the impact or anything like that. All right, so I'm going to grab my impact, and I'm going to run this in just like that. Okay, it's not tight. I'm going to get my ratchet on here, okay, and I'm going to snug it up where it's appropriate. You see it moves nice and freely, no play back and forth. If you don't have that washer on the back, two things are going to happen. This pulley's not going to be lined up with the other pulleys, and also it's going to drag on the oil pump housing. So it's to make sure that it moves freely and to space it in the appropriate spot. All right, so now that that's on, now we can go ahead and put the timing belt on. So that's what we're going to do next. So before we put the timing belt on, I want to show you guys our timing marks. We're good over here. We're good over here. And down here, you can see where they marked it. All right, this is your actual timing marks, okay? The ones on the crank pulley are just a reference mark. They should, in theory, they should be lined up, you know, they should be in time with this. But there are a lot of times that the crank pulley is shifted or something like that. Excuse me. Anyway, this is your lower timing mark. This is what we're going to use to make sure that the engine's in time when we put our belt on. All right. These cams, sometimes they will move. Okay. Sometimes the cams, they're under pressure with the valve springs, and they can pop and they'll rotate sometimes like 180 degrees. you can, I think this is a 19 mil. You can put a 19 mil ratchet or a socket on there and rotate it clockwise to line it back up. Normally it'll bounce left, it'll go this way. But either way, you can rotate it around. This is not going to hurt anything. The engine is not running, it's not rotating, you're not going to bend any valves. Although the springs are under a lot of tension, when this releases, you're not going to hurt anything. So we're going to go ahead and get our belt out of the box and get ready to throw it on, and I'll walk you guys through that. Alright guys, we got our belt. We're going to go ahead and start putting this guy on here. You can see right here it says left cam and the arrow is facing forward. You got right cam, arrow facing forward, and then at the other side of the belt you'll have crank, arrows facing forward. Alright, so this left cam is the left side of the engine, okay? This is how they operate, okay? Got the left cam, got the right cam, okay? I'm gonna loop it around the water pump in the center, just like that. Right side first, okay? I'm gonna throw it on the cam and roll it around, okay? And as you're rolling it around the left side, I'm pulling just a little bit of tension on it so it stays. Once I get to this point, then I'm gonna lay it on the left cam, okay? You make sure that your timing marks are lined up on the left and the right, and I'm keeping tension, a little bit of tension on it as I'm going. All right, now I'm gonna go around the idler on the bottom. All right, I'm gonna switch positions here. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm around the idler on the right, and now I'm gonna start working it on to the timing gear on the bottom. Okay, now it's on, and then I'm just gonna try and gently, if I can, walk it onto just like that, okay? So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna double check to make sure all of our timing marks are lined up. Okay, so we've got that's lined up, okay. Timing mark down there is lined up, and what I want to show you guys is if you look underneath, okay, there's that little dot that's painted white is lined up as well. Okay, so that's your timing mark on your belt. So that's what she looks like from underneath. What we're going to do now is we're going to bolt our new tensioner in, which is going to put tension on that pulley there. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now, and I'll do that from the top. All right guys, we got our new tensioner. Okay, all right, this is a brand new tensioner. We're going to reuse the bolts that were in it. All right, you just kind of squeeze it into that spot. Now see, it's still got the pin in it. Think of this as like a little hand grenade, and it's got the pin in the tensioner. Get these bolts started. I'll grab my electric ratchet in just a second. Alright, so those are started. Alright, I've got the ratchet. Line this up. Try and run it up evenly if you can. Alright. I'm gonna grab my wrench, and we're just gonna make sure that it's tight. Just double check it, you know. You never know. There's certain things that I like to double check. So all right, now what I would advise you to do before pulling this pin is to double check your timing marks. All right, I can see them, they're good to go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this pin, okay, and that's gonna release that tension. That tensioner is gonna put pressure on that tensioner pulley. All right, so this next step is a little tip that I would like to recommend. Okay, we still have our tool on here, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna slide this guy on here to where it locks into that key, just like so. All right, now before I go any further, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this crank pulley by hand. If you can't turn this by hand, that's okay, just use a breaker bar. but this thing does not need to do a full revolution, okay? Don't let anybody tell you that. It does not need to do a full revolution. All you want to do is rotate it about a quarter turn to the right, which will be clockwise, and then we'll reset it back to 0. And what that's going to do is make sure that the tension is even all the way through the belt, okay? So that's all we're going to do. So we're going to rotate it around like this. It doesn't even have to be that far, okay? That's good. And then we're going to bring it back to 0, okay? I'm going to bring it back to 0. I can see that my timing mark on the crank is good. Good up here, good there. And now we'll slide this off. And now we're good. And so the next step is this guy here. Remember I said do not forget this. It'll never start without this, okay? We're gonna put this guy on here, just like so. Facing out, okay, the concave facing out. It goes onto the key. And now you can probably see it a little bit better. But if you were to put this on the wrong way, it's gonna hit that belt. I'll show you. Okay, if you were to put it on facing the wrong way, I don't even know if it, yeah, I mean, it's immediately touching the belt. You'd probably destroy a bunch of stuff as soon as it tries to crank up. That's assuming it would even try and start, but just turning the engine over with the starter, it would probably destroy the timing belt immediately. So this right here, the concave has to be facing out. Now we're going to get our timing cover. Okay, we're gonna put this guy on like so. We got our 10mm bolts. Okay, we're gonna run them in. Put the one at the bottom. These magnetic sockets are a lifesaver, by the way. If you like investing in tools, that's a good one to invest in. Alright, so now that that is back on, and you know what? I didn't even follow my own directions. This is exactly why I do this, okay? But that dust cover, I even had it sitting on top of this and I moved it and then just threw this on there. But that dust cover goes right here, okay? And that's why I put it on top of this, and I don't know what I was doing. I just moved it. I'm gonna see if I can slide it in there, and if not, I'm gonna pull this cover off real quick. All right, got pretty lucky there. It goes on just like that, so no big deal. But when you pull this cover off, just throw this on top of the cover so you don't forget it, just like I just did. And now we can go ahead and get our new fan bracket pulley, which is right here. So it goes on this stud right here, and then there's a stud at the top that it slides onto. Okay, and you just gotta kind of walk it around this harness here. Just like so. All right. Now sometimes you might have to kind of tap it on with a mallet or a hammer because it won't sit flush. Just like that. A little tip for you guys. You know, we have 4 bolts that go through the face, or nuts and bolts, but there's 4 mounting points through the face of it on the front, and then there's the 2 through the air compressor or AC compressor. I would not tighten these up all the way. I would get them started and then get those started, and then once everything is started, then tighten up the bolts. If you tighten up these first or these first, you could have a hard time getting these started. So that's what we're going to do now, but I'm going to you know, just get them started, get the ones on the bottom started, and then tighten everything up. Alright, got that one started. This big guy started here. All right, so all these are started. I'm going to go to the bottom, throw that one in real quick. That one started. And now I could tighten these up too. And while I'm down here, I'm going to put this bracket on real quick. I already grabbed my socket. I feel like there's probably going to be some parts of this video that are very boring and dry. Feel free to skip ahead to anything that might be helpful or useful for you. Alright, got those tight. We're going to tighten these 14 mils here, just like that. Switch over to the 12. Now we can go ahead and put our. We can go ahead and start looking at bolting on our cam gear cover and everything that's up here. So I'm gonna take a few of these bolts out. These are for the outside. Alright. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of let this guy hang a little bit. Okay. We're going to get this lined up. There's only one way for this to go on. If there's some little nipples that stick out that it sits on, so you can't put it on incorrectly. You just have to get it lined up. Just like that. This one goes on the bottom. You'll know if you got them in the wrong, the bolt and the stud in the wrong spot if the cover doesn't go on. So there's that. Alright, so that's lined up. We got our 10 mil socket. They don't have to be crazy tight. Now, kind of guide that wire through. Also, on the back side of this cover, there's this little lip here, okay? It's like a little tooth. If you look, it has to go behind that, okay? Behind the fan bracket, okay? So you kind of have to go in at an angle, kind of guide it down in there, like so. You get it in at an angle and line your stud up. Once you get it close, it'll just drop on. Gotta get that stud lined up though. Kind of a pain in the butt. Come on. If anything, this is, you know, this is real life struggles here, you know, stuff that this happens. It's never perfect every time. There we go. All right, see that? Now we can put this rubber grommet back on. Okay, so it's going to go on here like this. Slide on. Like that. And I'm going to stop recording for a minute. I just had somebody show up. All right, guys. I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit because I'm starting to get hungry and I'd like to get to a good stopping point for lunch. Let's see, it's It's 11:50 right now, so I think in about, I don't know, 15-20 minutes I can have the whole front of the engine put together, and I'll probably stop there for lunch. So anyway, so we just got this cover sit on, got the rubber grommet on, and now we're going to grab the 10 mil magnetic socket here, and we're going to bolt this cover down real quick. Okay, so just going to run these in. Alright, there's that. Alright, now we can go ahead and we're going to flip this harness back over here, kind of get it in the right spot here. Okay, get these pulled back through here like this. Now, obviously we talked about some of this stuff already being broken. It's very common when doing these jobs. I used to get upset, you know, seeing all this stuff broken, but it gets to a point where there's so many of them, and the plastic's all brittle. Like, you can't be mad at somebody for coming in here and, you know, a couple things break and stuff, but it's gonna happen no matter what. Alright, so got that wire clipped in there. Oh, we need to get that little bracket on down here with the Phillips head. So we're gonna do that real quick. Alright, this bracket's kind of a pain, especially when the cover's back on there, but I just got that tight. Alright, so that's all back together. Good to go there. And let's see. Alright, now we'll go ahead and we'll bring this coolant pipe back up like this, and it gets tucked in behind the harness here. Alright, now we'll put this 10mm nut back on it right here. This one goes in this bracket down here. Tighten these up. Alright. I think now we'll go ahead and put our crank pulley on. Now you see I left the tool on here, that way I didn't have to take it off. Got our crank bolt. Pull this back over for now. Alright, snug that up as tight as you can by hand, and we'll start grabbing our breaker bars. Okay, I'm going to put one breaker bar just like so. And the other breaker bar, put on here like that. Now we're going to tighten them up just like this. Move it this way and just give her the beans. That should be good. Now we're going to go ahead and take the bolt back, the tool back off. We don't need that anymore, so we're going to take that back off. Tool is good. So next step is the new tensioner, drive belt tensioner. So we got the new tensioner here. Okay, this guy's gonna go on just like this here, just like that. for it. Remember, one of these was loose. I went to go take it apart. There's that. Get our impact. So 12 mils. Alright, next there's that cover with the 2 bolts. This guy here. Alright, this is kind of like that cover right there. It's got these lips on it that has to go behind. Okay, so when you put this on, you got to go behind the fan bracket, and then also right here, when you go back like this, lift it up a little bit, and then it'll sit flush after that. I see a lot of times when I do these covers are not sitting flush because somebody didn't know how to get those sat down properly. Okay, I'm going to tighten these 2 up. Alright, now leaving that 12 mil on there, we're going to go ahead and put this on there. And remember, I was talking about this, so I'm going to have to get this loose. So I'm going to put this in the vise real quick, hold on to that, bust that loose, and then we'll put this on. So I'll be right back. Alright, got it out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get this guy threaded in where it's supposed to go, like this. Okay. Tighten that up real quick. Just like that. Now we can go ahead and put this cover on. Okay. It's going to go on here just like this. Kind of line up that stud. Like that. There it is. Okay. You got this 10mm bolt here. You got these guys. These guys. I didn't realize how much I say that. That's kind of annoying me, but can't break it. Can't break that habit. Alright. Now we're going to go ahead and we'll throw the alternator on. So I'm going to lift it up just like this. Okay. And I'm going to get the stud lined up right there, just like that. And then I'm going to pull this out, slide it on, boom, done. Got 112 right here on the alternator. Got a 14mm bolt right here. Sometimes you got to wiggle the part around a little bit to get it to line up. And we've got 14mm right there. Alright. Go ahead and throw our studs in, our bolts into the power steering pump as well, just like that. Put this one in, the nut up top, just like that. We'll go ahead and make sure that they're started. It's always a good idea to make sure they're started. Last thing you want to do is strip out a bolt, because that is no fun. Alright. Do these 14s real quick. Alright, the last 12 for the alternator. Alright, next we're going to go ahead and, let's see, I'll go ahead and put these hoses back in this little bracket here. Just like that. Clip it down, lock it in place. I'm going to go ahead and put on this idler right here. Just like this. team. Just like that. All right, so I wanted to do this before I forgot, but I wanted to document this. So we're putting a new thermostat in this housing. When you do this, make sure there's a little valve right here, if that's what you want to call it, but this is an air valve, I guess, bypass. Make sure this is right in the 12 o'clock range. So when this is bolted in the vehicle, make sure that is at the highest point or pretty darn close to it. So that would probably put it, because this sits at a little bit of an angle, so it probably put it right about there. So just want to make sure that's known. This is pretty simple to replace the thermostat. This just bolts on here. Got a thermostat. The gasket fits around the thermostat itself. So pretty easy. So I just wanted to notate that before I put this on and got ahead of myself. All right, guys. Got the new thermostats in there. All right, we have this gasket surface, this channel. You want that as clean as you can get it, okay? We also installed our new O-ring right here, which comes in the timing belt kit. All right, this is also very important. I took a little bit of that pink rubber grease that I used and I put a little bit on there just to make sure that it slides in nice and easy. What we're gonna do next is we are going to put a nice little bead, basically put the bead right on top of this channel right here all the way around. The bead, I don't know what the exact measurement is, but like an eighth, you know, just a nice solid bead all the way around. You don't want like this giant bead, because when you smush these pieces together, that RTV or fibbage can get into the coolant passage. So, you know, you don't want a big bead, just enough to cover that channel. So that's what we're gonna do. And then we're gonna put this thermostat housing on and get it bolted on and let it sit for a while we're doing the rest of the install. I'm gonna show you how I do this. Okay, this is the easiest way I've found. So we're gonna take this. Do not touch anything with the bead on the other side, the bead of fibbage. But we're gonna basically slide this in, okay? Slide this into the hose, keep pushing, move it around a little bit. All right, once it's in, I already have my bolts in. I'm gonna use this bolt on the right to line up the hole, and then your O-ring up on the top left there, it's gonna go in, and you're just gonna gently work it in like so, okay? And then now the bolts should thread in just like that. Take our impact. Gonna get them snug, and then we will double check them by hand, make sure they are good. All right, they're solid. And now what we can do is get our hose clamp on here and then get this guy on there. So that's what we're gonna do now. I can see it coming. I can see me being made fun of for saying this guy so much. Don't worry, I'm beating myself up for it. I don't know. So get this guy right there, see? Okay. Make sure your hose clamps get installed all the way, okay? All right, so now that is on, it's bolted on, we're good to go. The engine is basically done. What we're gonna do next is we are going to go ahead and get the fan bolted on, and then after that, the radiator and hoses. All right, next we got our pulley for our fan. Get this guy on like that. And our fan will go on. And this is going to be the same process that I do to remove. Get them all started by hand, you know, get it threaded on, and then I'll put the belt on. Once everything's kind of threaded down by hand, I'll get the belt on, and then I'll go back through and tighten them up. The belt, believe it or not, it does help a lot. It helps keep it from wiggling around, you know, trying to, you know, also, like, you know, you tighten one, look at this, you tighten one, and then maybe it spins all the way around, and you're like, oh shit, where's the other one at? So, anyway, we're gonna get all these snug, and then we'll get the belt out. I wonder how long this video is gonna be. I hope it's got enough detail to where somebody feels confident they could do this on their own with fairly basic tools. Belt is on. Now we're going to start tightening up all the fan bracket bolts. Snug them up a little bit more before having to use the pry bar. Alright guys, we got the new radiator here. This is a Denso radiator, and it has these hooks on the back here, which this one looks like it got bent in shipping, so I'm going to straighten that out real quick. But as you drop it in, these hooks, there's a place for them to slide in and hold it in place while you're bolting it down. So that's what we're going to do real quick. The fan shroud, for the record, the fan shroud will go on separately, and it's pretty easy to put in separately, so that's what I'm doing. One side, and there's the other. Alright, then we have our 4 bolts. I'm going to take the fan shroud off the old radiator real quick, and throw the shroud in. Once this fan shroud is in, we can go ahead and start putting the radiator hoses on and coolant. And then we are on the home stretch. Alright, y'all. Got the shroud in finally. Had a little trouble with it because the clips that come for the radiator kept falling off, and they were falling down and not lining up. So it took a little while for me to get them situated. But fan shroud is in. I'm gonna tighten the bolts up. Shroud's in. We still have to put the cover on the bottom. I'll do that while I'm down on the bottom. We'll do radiator hoses next. Alright guys, there may have been a little lapse in video there. I was had people coming in and out and talking and distracting me and stuff. So anyway, radiator's in, the fan shroud is in, the radiator hoses are in, the transmission lines are on. I do need to put the lower radiator shroud on and the intake tube, and then we'll go ahead and start putting some coolant in this thing. So those will be the next steps: intake tube, coolant, and the bottom of the radiator shroud. So let's get this thing wrapped up. Guys, one thing I like to do for any vehicle that I work on for somebody is I like to clean the throttle body. This one is actually not that bad, but I'm gonna go ahead and wipe it down real quick and just make sure she's good to go. So I'm just gonna take some brake cleaner on a rag and just get in there and make sure that it's good.
a little bit of junk in there. Looks pretty good. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and get this the intake back on. Make sure you connect all your hoses. Remember, one of these was not connected, but we got it connected now. We got hose clamps lined up. Put this bolt back in here, like so. Go ahead and tighten it up. This guy. Everything's back together. Got the intake back on. Putting coolant in it right now. Got the lower radiator shroud cover on. And we're about to start it up and see how she does. Gotta add some more coolant to it first. Alright, let's go ahead and do this first start up. She's running, everything's together, sounds good, it's nice and quiet. It's a job well done. Don't forget to put your sticker on. So this one previously had a sticker right here, so I'm just going to slap this one over that one. But this job is done. I hope the customer is happy with it. I hope you guys were able to learn something from this video. Maybe bits and pieces. Maybe there's something in here that'll help you get yours done, or it'll just inspire you to you know, go out there and work on your project or your truck and do it yourself and learn and you know, go through the struggles of learning. It's all fun, and it's very rewarding doing things on your own. So I hope you guys can get something out of it. So thanks for watching.